IVM.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Here's your smart fact of the day. Do you guys remember a phone company called Blackberry? Actually, it was called Research in Motion, and it was that company that had the Blackberry phone. The company was, growing by leaps and bounds from 1999 to 2007, but the launch of the touchscreen iPhone in 2007 triggered a dramatic shift away from Blackberry handheld devices. And it tried to do a lot of turnarounds, but it never could. It lost more than half of its market value in 2 years. Is that a lesson that perhaps now Apple can take? This is what this episode of Smarter But Said is going to look at. Let's go. So when you listen to me, you'll say, no, Apple's got its shit together and, Blackberry and Apple, you can't compare them, man. But let me maybe think about a few things before I, kind of make you think about them too. If you look at it, Blackberry was valued in September 2010, having the largest market share, 37% in the US smartphone market. Global user base stood at 41 million subscribers. Unfortunately, that was the peak of it, right? After that, the company continued to lose ground to Apple and maybe even to Android phones and was never able to come back. So is there a lesson for it for Apple? Here's the interesting fact. There is a very interesting sort of lesson. Today, Apple is at 2.08 trillion, right? It is huge as a company and its basic valuation depends a lot on the iPhone. In fact, it was just 1 trillion just a few months or maybe a year back. Today, it's 2 trillion. And somebody as renowned as Professor Scott Galloway says that it's going to be 3 trillion soon. And if you look at the way in which Apple's grown and its wonderful ability to innovate and to, design things and the iPhone and the rest of it, you'd think twice before challenging both Professor Scott Galloway as well as the Apple valuation going to yet another 3 trillion sort of thing by the end of 2022. But I think that perhaps we need to look at a Black Swan moment for Apple, and that is exactly what I'm talking about. So what is this Black Swan moment? A Black Swan moment is essentially something that happens to the environment, to the context in such a way that has not been seen before and something that completely shakes things up. For example, it was the 2008 recession and, that led to so many businesses just suddenly shutting down and so many consultancies shutting down. And nobody could have predicted that based upon, what I understand as indicators coming from the past. So those are lagging indicators. But if I look at leading indicators, right? Leading indicators are the ones that are going to predict the future, and they are based upon all the new things that are happening in the marketplace. So what am I worried for as far as Apple is concerned? So if you look at it, the way in which the smartphone market has evolved, I think it has reached a place of incremental innovation. If you look at the innovation that Apple has been doing right from Apple i10, maybe i11, iPhone 11, and so on and so forth, you'll see incremental changes, all very good. The phone is amazing. The user interface is fantastic. The design is sexy, all of that. But the fact is that all of these have not been very disruptive. They're fantastic. They do a world of good to all the consumers. And it's still probably, in my biased opinion, a little better than Android. But Android guys might even say, look, pal, phone makers are almost equally as good. But I'm not talking of Apple as a company. I'm talking of that industry, the smartphone industry, and the perils that it faces from, you guessed it, the metaverse. So my belief is that Apple is not going to be threatened by another smartphone maker, but by somebody who creates a device on the metaverse and people going to the metaverse and not requiring smartphones at all over a period of time. Now, do I believe that it's going to happen in 2022? Not really. I'm not somebody who's very good at predicting the exact timelines on when something like this is going to happen, nor is any other renowned scholar in the world. But what I do know and what I do understand is the power of the metaverse and the fact that you may not require digital screens at all in order for you to actually enjoy the newer version of the internet that is going to be explored by the metaverse. So if you look at the metaverse, you're going to take on your digital avatar through a pair of glasses maybe in the future, and right now Oculus Rift or something of that sort, and are going to be able to interact in a much more immersive way than what the smartphone actually allows all of us to do at this moment. So what does that mean? This means that the disruption that the metaverse is going to create is going to make sure that the smartphone Apple has, the iPhone, and the surrounding ecosystem built around the iPhone is going to suffer with a lot of magnitude. Because if I look at all the App Store and iTunes and everything, it's all built around the iPhone. And if the iPhone tanks because of a disruptive event, then there is serious trouble ahead for Apple. Now, if you compare this with the Blackberry example that I had given at the beginning of this episode, you will soon know what I'm talking about. Blackberry was, doing very good phones which were focused on the business user. And then, of course, you had the Blackberry boys wherein they were trying to expand the universe. But no amount of brand communication was able to actually hide the fact that you needed some sort of QWERTY keyboard in order to move ahead. It was not a smartphone, and Apple and Android and just took over the market very, very rapidly. As some famous author had said, change comes like debt. It comes very slowly at first and then very, very quickly later on. Maybe I'm screwing the statement up. I think it is about debt, but I think the same applies to change as far as that quote is concerned. So this change has been happening quite under the radar, and it is happening gradually, and we've been hearing about things like augmented reality, virtual reality, Internet of Things, quantum computing, so many new terms, right? I'm throwing at you. And we'll get into all of that with further Smarter with Sid episodes. But today, what I want to focus on is what will happen if the underlying technology actually does a big shift, gets disrupted, and people just start moving to a new, better way of doing things. Suddenly, the smartphone that Apple has is very challenged. So, do I think Apple's stock valuation has kind of peaked? I think that the peak is probably right there, or it is going to come soon. Now, whether it becomes from 2 trillion to 3 trillion is anybody's guess. But if I look at past indicators, lagging indicators, you will think, it is going to be 3 trillion soon. I'm saying maybe, but maybe not, unless and until Apple gets out of just being dependent upon the iPhone and its resultant ecosystem for it to drive the stock up. Can Apple actually get out of something like this? Yeah, sure. I mean, Apple has been making a foray into entertainment. Apple has been making a foray into even cars, I believe. And I'm sure a company that has the genius of so many intelligent people, so many intelligent designers and thinkers, is going to find new ways in which it can entice customers to be loyal to it. There's a lot of good things with Apple. One of the things that I really like about Apple as a company is that it does not dependent upon, the attention seeking attitudes that other big companies like Facebook and Google have. I mean, their business models are predicated by the fact that you require to spend a lot of time on those applications. Apple is a company that does it very effortlessly, and it allows you to actually be private about things and so on and so forth. So don't get me wrong, I'm not counting Apple out, but I have not seen any disruptive innovation coming from the Apple stable for quite some time. And it's quite likely that if they miss out on this metaverse bus or this metaverse immersion, they might end up exactly like Blackberry. Well, I hope not, because I'm an Apple fanboy. But this is what the future may look like for Apple. I hope you looked at this case that I've presented in this episode of Smarter with Sid. I'd love to know what you think. It is a radical view, but I think maybe the Black Swan event might just end up happening for Apple sooner rather than later. I hope Apple's geared for it. And I hope you like this episode. And I hope you like further episodes of mine coming out in this year. And if you like stuff like this, just go for all the stuff that IVM's got. There's some brilliant stuff for all of us, whatever you may like as your poison. And hey, if you like me, I'm the Traveling Professor. Follow me on LinkedIn and on Instagram, wherein, I'm quite active. On that happy note.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to Anil Vishwanathan of Mondelez India. They discuss the beloved Cadbury brand and its campaigns over the years. On Speakeasy, Dheeraj is in conversation with Ranjit Pratap Singh, the CEO and co-founder of Pratilipi. Hey, that's our parent company. They talk about how Ranjit tapped into the need for non-English storytelling content and created a company with over 30 million readers worldwide. On Smarter with Sid, resolved to have better resolutions. Sid tells us how understanding the difference between objectives and outcomes can be liberating. On Tere Mere Raaste, Keshav takes us to Dubai, world of skyscrapers, world-class infrastructure, glittering malls, and massive boulevards. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina goes over the concept of self-abandonment. She explains the do's and don'ts of dealing with it. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. The word of mouth absolutely is essential to us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you've been listening to. And also, I'd like to ask everybody to check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels going. You can find all of them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intel. Thank you so much for making this possible.
We live in an age of disruption, of immense change in every aspect of work, life, and business. But is the old way of doing things truly dead? And are we ever going to stop saying the new normal? Join me, Varun Dugirala, on Advertising is Dead every Tuesday as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, creators, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond to dig a little deeper into how we got here, what we're doing now, and where we're headed. You can catch all the episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.